Hey, folks, welcome back to the latest episode of Because Marie Said So. I'm Matt Major from Growth Mode Content, and it is my honor to be a guest again on this incredible show next to the incredible Marie Adornato.
Thank you so much.
From Adornato Couture, Spy Baby Bride. I don't know which one we're leading with today, but professor at SU, all of the above. We can just read her resume. And that'd be a whole podcast in itself. But Marie, thank you again for inviting me to join you on your show. We've been putting some things out from your first recordings, and people are loving it. And it makes a lot of sense because you're so incredibly interesting, and not even in just one area. You know, folks that love fashion find it interesting. Folks that are interested in business, whether you're a woman entrepreneur, whether you're a gentleman trying to start a business, all of this stuff has been great information, and thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I don't think I'm that interesting, but
you'd be
I do
surprised.
have some interesting stories, that's for sure.
Yeah,
but
and that's what people love, right? That's why we're making a podcast. So, Marie, let's dive right in, and I think one of the things that we should talk about, kind of the hot topics of the day, is that you currently have an investment, kind of a unique investment funding, crowdfunding opportunity going on right now with your business. And it's through this platform called is it Honeycomb Credit?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything about this until you announced your campaign, and I looked into it. And this is an incredible platform. And if you want to tell folks a little bit, they might be familiar with I want to say, kind of the traditional crowdfunding that kind of popped on the scene some years ago. But this is a very unique opportunity, right? Can you tell folks about it, and then specifically what the opportunity is that you're offering on the platform?
Absolutely. So crowdfunding, as we've kind of known it as a buzzword, has been trending. You know, when someone has some sort of an issue where there's a tragedy and we're raising money for something, that's kind of how we know crowdfunding. But that's not all that crowdfunding is.
Yeah.
So what we saw out of the Obama administration was crowdfunding came about to help actual startups to be able to fund their businesses, and also to help small businesses scale their businesses.
Yeah.
So this was one of the wonderful things that did come out of the Obama administration. And what it allows companies to do is to raise capital, bringing in investors without losing equity. So the owners get to keep 100% of their equity. And how it works, investors will pledge a dollar amount, and we work through Honeycomb Credit, which is probably one of the most amazing companies and the most amazing platforms.
Really?
Yeah, I met the company about 3 years ago, and they were fairly new at the time as well. And to see their growth and the way that they're helping entrepreneurs launch new businesses and scale existing businesses has been pretty amazing. So what's great about crowdfunding is I can have investors come on they can invest in me for as little as $100. Wow. And there's a specific period of time, it's usually 30 days, that the offering is available. So what the business will do is, go through the whole process of providing financials to Honeycomb. They're vetted as a business. They go through underwriting the same way as if it was a loan from a bank, but it's not a loan, it's an investment. So what happens is all of that investment money comes into an escrow account, sits there as we're going through the 30-day process of raising funds. At the end of that 30 days, that dollar amount that you're able to raise turns into an actual loan. So what happens is the business will pay a monthly payment to Honeycomb, and on a quarterly basis, investors will receive their dividends. So what's wonderful about it right now is, we've seen a little volatility happening in our stock market. Yeah. So if you're heavy in the stock market and, you're working with financial advisors that are trying to kind of mitigate the risk. But what's great about crowdfunding, and especially working through Honeycomb, you can actually mitigate that risk by having a specific percentage. And in my case, it's 10.1% of a dividend that you'd be receiving on your money. Now, that does not fluctuate as the market does. So it's a little bit different type of an investment. Yeah. But what's wonderful for the small business owner is you have the ability to not have to wait 2, 3, 4 months if you go to a bank for funding for a project or to purchase equipment or to grow the business.
Yeah.
Banks tend to have a lot more regulation. There's a lot more red tape to go through. And by the time that you're approved by the bank, the opportunity that you're trying to raise capital for is since gone.
Yeah.
So what's been really great about my relationship with Honeycomb Credit has been that they're very interested in finding out what new projects I have going on, what sort of advancement that we're in, growth that we are scaling in our business. And in the last 3 years since becoming a part of the Honeycomb family, my business has just grown exponentially.
Wow. So that's very interesting because, like you said, normally these opportunities for you to invest, to contribute to a local business, in many cases you have to be what's known as an accredited investor rather. And I'd love for you to talk about a little bit, and just to be clear, you don't have to be on Honeycomb, right? You can be an average Joe who has $100. Can you talk about that just a little bit and give folks just a little bit of clarity? Because I think it's something a lot of folks don't necessarily even understand that world. Is technically, these things, you see these deals on Shark Tank. Technically, if you're don't meet these qualifications, you wouldn't be able to, even if you had $10,000 to give one of these companies, technically you're not an accredited investor and you're not allowed to do such a thing, right?
Exactly. And I'm glad you asked that question because my first round of funding that we did a few years ago, the first investor was a $100 investment from an investor in Arizona who I didn't even know.
Wow.
On a total opposite side of the country. So through Honeycomb, all that you have to do is you create an account. You put in where the account that you're going to be, depositing funds from. And for as little as $100, you can invest in any of the offerings that are on the Honeycomb platform. And there are many of them.
Yeah, it's neat.
So it really allows everyone the opportunity to invest in businesses specifically that are local to their communities. So if there's a business that's on the platform that is in your local community, you shop there, you've patroned there for years, you love the owner, you love the product, you love the business, what an amazing way to create a local circular economy.
Yeah.
So this sense of crowdfunding, this concept has really become something that businesses, especially small businesses with really unique concepts, many of them are, and you can see right on the platform, it really gives us an opportunity to be able to advance our businesses, scale, grow, purchase equipment, and have access to capital that we normally wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And this is specifically important for women and minorities in entrepreneurship as well, where many times our access to venture capital and debt financing can sometimes be a little bit more restricted.
Yeah. No, I think this is an incredible idea, an incredible platform. One of the things I like about it is the simplicity, right? And even just in the crowdfunding world, if you think of some of these sort of original, like an Indiegogo or these things where you were able to crowdfund, typically what you did is you were crowdfunding a product with the idea of once it went into production, you would get one of these things, right? That was often the case. And oftentimes they ran into many problems and you didn't get your thing, and it was sort of a big flop. Here it's very straightforward. You don't have to rely on this company figuring out all these different pieces. If you're comfortable in their model, they're able to basically pay back on your end this loan and you just get your simple dividend. You don't wait for months and months of hoping, 2 years down the road, this awesome invention that I thought was cool back then, I might show up on my door. It's like I said, it's very simple, very straightforward for all parties, I feel like.
And I think, too, it's important to distinguish between crowdfunding and crowdsourcing, which many times crowdsourcing, that's what that concept is, where you would receive the thing once it's created. But through the crowdfunding, you're specifically investing. And so that's one of the things that I think education is important in educating people about what crowdfunding is, because I have had some feedback where, even customers are like, well, do I put a deposit on this dress because I'm not sure if you're going to be in business because you're asking for money in the public eye? And so that, to me, goes to show that we have an ignorance in our community regarding what crowdfunding actually is. Right. So, you know, being in business 30 years, I was kind of like, okay, well, that's an interesting, but at least I know now what the thought process is, and we can address educating our community locally and beyond as to what it is, which is an investment.
I think that's a great point, and that's something that I hadn't thought of, but now that you mention it, I could absolutely see, because, you know, the top of mind crowdfunding thing that we think of these days, they weren't the first to the market, but they're definitely the top right now, is GoFundMe, right? Mm-hmm. And it's something you do to help out in tragedy.
Right.
And usually when you see a business on GoFundMe, it's because they're like minutes away from closing the doors, and, you know, the bank is standing there to lock up. It's like a horribly dramatic scene.
Or there's been some sort of tragedy
they had
for the
a fire
business.
And, you know, help us save our, you know, whatever. So I can definitely see kind of where that mindset might come up. Right. I would have never thought of that.
And this is something totally different. You know, crowdfunding is an investment. So it's not a donation. We're not a nonprofit.
This is a different way to Shark Tank.
Exactly.
You know.
So what it's doing, it's providing businesses like mine with a unique opportunity to raise capital.
Sure.
And also, one of the wonderful things about crowdfunding, especially through Honeycomb, they do such a great job in promoting our businesses on their platform, where I now have access to customers from all over the country.
Oh, wow.
And the internet does take you all over the world.
Sure.
But, you know, this is allowing us another avenue to increase our revenue, because now we're bringing on more legacy customers.
Right.
And we have seen an increase in sales and an increase in commitment and loyalty to our brand because of the Honeycomb platform.
Yeah, I think that's really neat. And, you know, just to put a pin on that last piece, I think what's interesting, a lot of people might not realize, is how every rapidly growing, successful business continually leverages financing and credit and banks and loans and things like this to propel their growth. It's not a matter of I'm running out of money and I got to go to in fact, the banks, in that case, often that's the time they're least likely to give you any sort of money, as if you're in trouble. You know, it's
exactly.
These are funds that every business uses to take it to the next level. This is how you buy a new delivery truck, you open a new location, things of that nature. Takes money.
Well, and businesses that are like moving and grooving and really coming up with problems for pain points for their customers.
Sure.
Those are the businesses that are rapidly changing. They're rapidly moving forward and scaling. And that's why you're seeing these businesses seeking capital.
Yeah.
Now, for 30 years, I've bootstrapped for 30 years.
Sure.
So, you know, being in business for that amount of time, I've gone through ups, downs, in-betweens. I mean, we survived COVID, you know?
Yeah.
So businesses that did that, especially retail businesses, those businesses are the ones that you know will be the last one standing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Marie, I think that's a great segue to something else that we wanted to talk about a little bit. As we talk about small businesses and financing and things like this, one of the things that you told me that's very interesting is there's a ridiculous number of businesses these days that are still cash only.
Yes.
And as cool as that sounds, and as much as, you know, kind of old school and local small business, and yeah, you know, we do the cash discount, you know, in modern times, that's sort of a problem in business, right?
Yes. I mean, there's a couple things. So I have a fintech company that focuses on efficiencies in businesses. One of the efficiencies that especially small businesses can really tap into is the use of offering credit cards for your customers to be able to pay.
I see.
A lot
store card, so to speak.
Even a store card, or just a general credit card, because a lot of young, like new businesses, they don't even accept credit cards. So they're not accepting Apple Pay, they're not accepting Visa, they're not accepting MasterCard. And that's something that's like a foreign concept to us, because now most people don't carry cash. So everything is done digitally. So it's really important for new and businesses and growing businesses that are not accepting credit cards that they do that. And why? The first reason is the average person is not carrying cash.
Yeah.
So everything is attached to some sort of digital wallet or some sort of credit card or account. So you want to make it as easy for your customer to be able to finish the purchase. We want to be able to complete the purchase quickly and easily and be able to check out and move on with their day.
Right.
We don't want to put any barriers in place between the customer and the business when it comes to the purchase side of things.
Right.
So what allowing people to pay by credit card does, it creates ease for them. And that's really one of the main things. Convenience is something that people are looking for. Second of all, if you are a 100% cash business, you are putting yourself in a situation where you are at 3 to 5 times more risk of being audited by the IRS. And why is that? Well, because it creates the risk
They
of
know.
well,
They know.
it's a risk of having incorrect financial data.
Sure.
It's a risk of not reporting specific income that should be reported.
Yep.
So there are situations that could really be detrimental for a business by not offering credit cards. And it allows the business also to take a look at, okay, what type of payment are people, what are they using?
Yeah.
Are they using Apple Wallet more? Are they using Visa more, MasterCard? Are they using American Express? And are they using credit cards that are point related? It allows you to gather more information about your primary target market so that you can kind of take a look at the different pain points that exist and for them and say, hey, maybe I need to change my policy to go this way because I know based on the data that I've collected from the customer that I'm going to be servicing them better by changing that info. So I always share with businesses, especially small solopreneurs, it's very important to offer the ability for a customer to pay you by credit card.
So let me ask you this, Marie, because I think probably the biggest pushback from any business owner who doesn't want to do that, who wants to operate in cash, is they'll tell you that they don't want to give up it's usually 2.5% to maybe 3.5% of the sale to the credit card company. What's your response to that?
Well, at the end of the day, we are in a culture now where customers are prepared for that additional credit card price. So there's a cash price and a credit card price.
I see.
So they are prepared to pay the credit card price because that's what they're doing, across all of the merchants where they're shopping.
Yep.
So the expectation is there that credit card price they're willing to pay.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And, one of the things that you could do too, and I always promote primary research, ask the customer, ask them their opinion, ask them, what do they prefer? But at the end of the day, if I grab my purse and I'm running to get, my makeup done and the makeup artist only takes cash and I don't have cash on me, it's an inconvenience for me now.
It's a big problem.
It's embarrassing for me to not have the payment.
It's sort of the opposite the way it used to be.
Right. And I think, to make it more convenient and easy, and also you'll increase your sales when you offer credit card payment because the tip function is right there. The customer doesn't have to calculate that in their head.
Right.
The credit card, terminal will give you that, whether it's a digital terminal, whether it's a mobile terminal or, an in-person terminal.
Yeah.
So it really keeps it easy and convenient for the customer. And you also will increase your sales because if there's an additional product that's a complementary product, the customer's going to say, okay, well, just go ahead and throw that in there.
Sure.
This hairspray that you used on me, I really love it. And how much is it?
It's definitely
$20.
easier to spend
just
more.
Throw it on. Much easier
on
to
a card
spend
than
more
cash.
when you don't have the physical cash in your hands.
Sure. I think those are phenomenal points. And, one thing that I had always thought of, and I feel like maybe this is sort of a mixed review, but, you have that, we're talking about whatever the credit card fee is. Like I said, it could be between 2.5%, usually 3.5%, somewhere in the middle. my thought was always just to make that into the price. Take whatever your standard retail price is, add 3%, and that is the price, period. And should somebody pay cash, well, they paid an extra 3%. But to me, I just sort of factoring it in. But the other side of that is exactly what you just said in terms of increased sales. And I think that's the part that so many people don't understand. It's like, yeah, I'm going to lose 3% on these 5 sales, but I'm going to do 25 more sales that I wouldn't have done. So, does that equal out?
Well, one of the important things, too, and to remember, when the merchant is thinking, should I increase my price? Well, that's not really getting rid of that extra 2.53%. So what's happening is, if an item,
you're going to add that on top of
you're adding it on top.
Yeah.
So if you look at the mathematical equation, that comment is a little.
No, that makes a ton of sense.
It just kind of like
that's why I asked.
The customer. No, but the customer, that's their thought process. Yeah. So it's really important for us to communicate to them the fact that incorporating a 2.5% or 3% difference in a price is actually not helping, because on top, if you're still paying by credit card, now you're paying the extra 3% price plus the 3% credit card fee that the merchant's being charged.
I think the biggest thing that, and it's exactly the way I described it, and I'm glad, because you're completely right. Really, my thought, though, in general, is more of just sort of accept almost like a cost of doing business. You know what I mean? Like, I accept with every item that just like I got to pay the rent, or it takes me 3 cents of electricity to make this thing. It's going to take me, $2 in bank fees,
Right.
But I agree. Like I said, and I think the biggest thing that really needs to stick in people's minds is that increase of business in general. Like you said, the I guess you call it the impulse item, or the, throw that in sort of thing. We've all been there. We've all done that. We've been at the cash register. We've been in the Amazon cart. And now let me click one more button. It's different when you're filing through your cash and now that's another bill. So I think you're absolutely right. And it's so easy these days.
Well, and another great point to make too is, let's face it, many people in our current economy, in our current economic situation, many people just simply don't have cash.
Yeah.
So I just saw a report that 25% of people are buying groceries with a firm. Mm-hmm. So that's telling us that, firms is a amazing resource for people to use for, if they don't have cash to pay for something, where they can pay over time, which for some products that's very applicable, and it's it makes sense. But for groceries, that's telling us that we don't have the disposable income.
Sure.
So it's giving us a reflection of what our current economic situation is. So if you're not offering credit cards to be accepted as a form of payment in your business, you're going to lose the sale completely.
Yeah.
Because people simply will not be able to afford to be able to come into your business and be able to purchase from you.
Absolutely.
And they will go to your competitor. And what happens is, when that customer goes to the competitor, what's the chances of them coming back?
Yeah, the competitor wins them.
And the competitor is offering the ability to use a credit card.
Yes.
So, on a competitive analysis standpoint, this is a very important point. Yeah. Every business, whether you're a solopreneur, whether you're a big business, has to offer payment. They have to accept payment variety, where we need to be able to say, okay, you can pay cash, you can pay credit, but not just credit. You can pay with these different types of credit.
Right.
You can pay through PayPal. You can pay through Venmo. Really isn't accepted in a formal professional business setting typically, but for smaller businesses, it can be.
Yep.
So there's many different options and varieties for different payment options for people to be able to take advantage of. It's important to have that in your business.
I completely agree. And, I've seen it in the technology business, in the computer business, where years ago, it was always a matter of, you have a client and they have a big project, they need a network, or they need to replace 10 computers, that was, you had to find the company that had that cash on hand to write you that check for that. And they might need it, but maybe they don't have it. Then finance companies came around, and now IT providers like me were able to go to their clients and go, listen, we can set you up, same as when you buy a car or a home, to finance the price of all this equipment. And next thing you know, they were able to do that, and the IT business rapidly grew. And, years ago, there was a number of folks in this business who would tell you that 90% of the deals they do are actually financed. And it's great for the provider in that case, too, because then the finance company, the bank, whoever, pays me right away up front, and then I can buy the equipment and do the job, and I don't have to worry about, the customer who's stretching out the payment for 2 years.
Right. And also, too, like in that B2B world, that business to business. So we've been talking about, direct to consumer, but in that business to business situation, it really allows businesses, especially growing businesses, another opportunity to get that extra 30 days.
Yeah.
So especially if, it's an inventory-based type of a situation where, you need to pay the supplier so that you've got your inventory so that you can quickly turn it around and sell it. For a lot of retail businesses, they'll take like pre-orders on things. So if customers have prepaid you for something and now, you need to grab inventory from your manufacturer, this allows you the opportunity to do that as well. We see that a lot in the retail business, but we do see it now B2B across the board in various industries.
Yeah, it's lots of options, and they're great. And kind of speaking of options, that might be a horrible segue, but speaking of options, Marie, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about just women in business in general, right? And to give people just a quick little tidbit that is shocking to me that so many people don't know. But not that long ago, we're talking like my grandmother's age, ladies weren't allowed to have a bank account. You couldn't open your own credit card. You couldn't do a lot of things if you weren't married. And a lot of people, everybody talks about women's right to vote and things like that, but a lot of people don't realize that it was in our not too distant past that you literally couldn't even do these, what we consider traditional things. Obviously, that's changed, and we've come a long way, and they will give you a credit card, which is great. And, women are doing incredible things. But I'd love your opinion on this. Is it fair to say that all their troubles are over and we have full equality, or, what is the state of doing business as a woman today?
Well, being in business for 30 years, I've seen so much change, and it's been wonderful change. But it was back in the mid 80s that, women were able to get their own credit card and be able to get a loan from a bank in their own name. And I was a young teenager at the time.
Wow.
So in the last 30 years, we've seen a lot of advancement. We've seen a lot of women starting to have more access to capital, but we are still in such an antiquated situation where women and minorities in entrepreneurship still do not have equitable access to venture capital.
I see.
And much of that is simply because of the biases, because of the standards from previous generations. We're starting to see advancements in women becoming venture capitalists, and we're starting to see it more in the tech space.
Okay.
Women like Arlen Hamilton, who is an amazing, amazing entrepreneur. She was one of these women who really forged the way for women by creating a venture capital firm specifically focusing on providing capital to minorities in their new ventures. And, she was a woman who would sleep in the airport, didn't have a place to live, would take the train, into LA every day to try to create this amazing business. And she did. And now she is a business coach. She is an amazing entrepreneur, helping entrepreneurs with their businesses as well. But it's people like her that have sacrificed so much to make the advancements that we've made. But we're still at a point where there's still so much more work to be done. And it has so much to do with stereotypes and biases and things that we don't think about nowadays. We think, geez, as our young people don't realize that biases still exist, the stereotypes still exist. And these are things that, they will not understand until they face it in their own life. But yeah, I do think that there has been a lot of advancement, but we still have much further to go.
I think, this is one of those things where there's so many things you can talk about, so many things you can educate yourself on. But one of the easiest and best, I want to say, defenses against these things is people like you, right? Just an amazing, kick-ass woman out here doing it.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I mean it for real. It's, that's all they've got to do. If, women can't do that. Well, here she is, and she's doing it. And to me, you can get in the nuance of these things and everything, but it's just the most simple point is look at these. And I'm sure that you can name, and we all can, endless list of inspiring ladies that are doing incredible things in business and in society. And I think that's just more of it. Just, lead by example, I think is the best. And I appreciate you doing that.
Well, and I'll tell you, leading by example is not as easy as it looks.
Oh, absolutely not.
Life is not a linear projection. There are curves, there are twists, there are, points, there are ups and downs. And it's not an easy thing to do and to experience as a female entrepreneur. But, let's even talk about intersectionality. Think about the female entrepreneur who's not just being discriminated against because she's female. She may be Black. She may be lesbian.
Sure.
That intersectionality, she's not just discriminated against because she's a female. She's discriminated against because of race and, because of her sexual orientation. So these are things that we don't think about or understand until, you are meeting people who are experiencing this and are really paving the way for change. And can be a very hurtful journey for some of them.
Sure.
It can be a wonderful journey of, change, but at the same time, it's a daily struggle to get yourself up, to, work for what you believe in, to service your customers the way they should be serviced. And at the same time, you're dealing with that, and then you're dealing with everything else in the background where, I really want to open this second location. I really want to create this other division of my company, but I just can't get the financing to do it. Financing meaning debt financing or venture capital and, giving up equity to do it. Or the amount of equity that you're forced to give up makes you so diluted that it's really difficult, moving forward.
Doesn't feel like your thing anymore.
You're just not getting to the level that you want to get to and keeping control of your own company.
Yeah.
So these are things that are the reality of what we deal with, in the world of entrepreneurship.
That's great advice, Marie. And, one of the things that I really appreciate you saying is how you talked about, it's not a linear you don't go from A to B and become Marie, right? And it's awesome that we have these incredible entrepreneurs and that we're inspired and we aspire to be, and we all should. But the point that I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand is you see all these folks at the finish line. You see Marie as this successful person with this beautiful shop and all these things she's got going on. You don't get the backstory of, and again, we're telling these stories, but, you don't see the history of everything it took to get you through COVID and everything it took to even just buy a building and, all of those pieces and all of I don't know this for a fact, but I know this for a fact that you have a whole list of things that you've thought of and tried that didn't work out.
Right.
And I think that's the other point that people need to understand is you're not going to be the superstar millionaire at your first at bat, and
if you are, you're lucky.
Yeah. Right. But aspire to that, use that to drive you, but please don't feel like you're not reaching something if you're not where so many of these people you look up to are instantly.
Well, and I think this applies not just to business, but to life, right?
100%.
So, there's going to be an idea of where you want to go, but you may find as that journey begins, maybe this isn't really the right track for me. Maybe I need to do something a little different. And I think a lot of people have really compelling, unique stories that are very inspirational. And they wind up in a place that they didn't realize was even a possibility.
Sure.
You know, for me, I never had a plan to open up a bridal store, ever. I never had a plan to be a designer. I never had a plan to be a college professor. That wasn't the plan. The original plan was go to college, go to grad school, work for a corporation, work my way up in that corporation. But I quickly realized that wasn't going to be the case for me. That was not going to happen for me. You know, I was the student that walked into a room with a red boucle jacket on lined with pearls. So I wasn't the student that was in the gray suit, the blue suit, the black suit, like everybody else.
Yeah.
And my hair was, it's still big today. Big hair, don't care, right? Gets me closer to Jesus. So, but you know, my hair was always big and puffy, and I always had my jewels on, and you know, and it's funny because I'm Italian, obviously, and a lot of people go, you know, being Italian, you like everything shiny, and I'm like, you know, maybe that's a stereotype that does exist for a reason, because that's very true. I do love things shiny, but I do think for a lot of people, what they think their dreams are, your dreams change. And then once you wind up finishing your education, getting a little experience in various things, and then settling down with having a family. Yeah. That changes everything. Sure. And it does change your goals. It changes your dreams. Your dreams become many times much more enriched and much more special, because I think when people are younger, their dreams include a monetary goal. Sure. So if I make this much money, I'm finally going to get there. Yeah. And guess what? I'm guilty of that too. Sure. You know, it's like, okay, when I can finally afford to buy a Mercedes, right, I'm going to feel like I got there. And, you know, I bought my Mercedes online and then over the phone with the dealership. And guess what? It wasn't really that spectacular. It didn't get you there, huh? Yeah. So you realize really quick, like, the monetary goal should really be of least priority. And creating a profession out of passion and purpose, and pulling together what you love in life and, you know, what you've maybe been good at. You know, for me, it was like pageants. I was like a big pageant girl. Sure. And it was my sport. So I thought of pageants as a sport. You know, It was like pageant season. I had to get ready with my vocal coaches. I had to get ready. I had to get myself physically in shape. I had to get my interview, practices going. So that was one really important part of my life. But another important part of my life was my academics, you know, and my academic achievements. And I loved business, and I was very independent. So I was able to pull these two things together and create the life that I was meant to live. And I never really realized that growing up, and I should have, because my last name is Adornato, to be adorned in Italian. There you go. So, I mean, this was really what I was meant to do. Yeah. And many times it takes a long time for people to realize, you know, where are you supposed to be? Like, what are you supposed to be doing? What is your purpose? And it's okay if it takes some time to kind of figure that all out. You know, I think we expect young people, you know, to tell us, what type of academic program are you looking for? Do you want to go into, you know, health science? Do you want to go into business? Well, how are they supposed to know? Right. So that's why it's really important at a young age, especially like when they're starting in freshman year in high school. Okay. Start doing shadow days. Start doing little internships. Get a job. See what you like and what you don't like. Because I will tell you, in my experience, it was much easier to figure out what I liked and what I wanted because I knew what I didn't like. Yeah. Right? So at 15, I got a job as a cashier working at the local grocery store, which was a great job. I got the scholarship, and it really helped us out financially with my college education. That's awesome. I came out of college, with no loans. My dad supplemented the rest. But it was a great way for me to do that, especially as a young female, in the late 80s, early 90s. So that was a great experience. But what was also a great experience about that job, it taught me things that I really loved about people. I loved meeting people. And it taught me about what I didn't want to do the rest of my life, which was standing on my legs for 4 to 6 hours at a time, pushing, groceries, and bagging groceries. And that wasn't something that, although it was fun for a short period of time and I met great people, it wasn't something that I physically wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So that taught me at a very young age, use my independence wisely and seek out pain points and things that other people needed that I could solve their problem and enhance their life. And over time, that's what I did.
That's incredible. It's so much incredible advice that you have to share. And I'm so glad that we can share that. And honestly, everything that we're talking about leads as a great segue. We got great segues in this episode. There's a great segue to the next segment where I'm actually going to get out of here and you're going to have a conversation with your son.
Yes.
I'm excited to hear that. So, without further ado, I'm going to dip out of here and let you jump into the second half and talk about business with the family.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Awesome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marie Adornato from Because Marie Said So podcast. Today, I have a special, special guest, probably one of the most special people in my life. And what we're going to be talking about today is the perspective of a child of an entrepreneur, and not just of one entrepreneurial parent, but two. And we're going to be welcoming my son, Dante Egnoto, my favorite son, to our podcast. Dante, you just finished your first year of college at Syracuse University.
That's right.
I can't even tell you how proud of my baby boy that I am.
Thank you.
I always call Dante my baby boy. And I got to tell you, I appreciate the fact that he doesn't get embarrassed by me. And if he does, he doesn't say that he is. And I know that sometimes maybe he does. But I think that you've learned over time growing up that there's going to be a lot of situations where other kids might be embarrassed by their parents, but you're not really embarrassed because I think you appreciate how unique I am.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of been normal my whole life, so I don't really think too much about it. And even if I am embarrassed, I mean, it's
I'm your mom, so
it's not, I mean, yeah, it blows over.
So one of the things that we've never spoken about and that I want to ask you about, a lot of women in business, especially women who have particular degrees and are married later in life, like your dad and I were. I was 32 when we got married. He was 42. And we both had established businesses. So we were at a point where it didn't really make sense for me to change my name. And I was always going to be Marie Adornato. One of the things that I know was a little sensitive on Dad's side of the family was that I never changed my name. And is this something with you and your two sisters having Dad's last name? Is that something that you think you would have wanted me to change? Would you have wanted me to change my name?
That's never really bothered me at all. And I don't think it's really bothered my sisters either. I think that if you want to keep your name, that's totally fine. And yeah.
It's something that we never really spoke about, but I know that in certain families, there's a sense of cohesiveness that people feel by a name. And the way that I handled it was, in an academic setting for your school, I would go by Mrs. Egnoto. And, on a professional level, in a legal level, I'm Marie Adornato. Which leads me to the other kind of discussion about how was that for you with me constantly being on? I know as raising all of you, I was always on stage. You know what I mean? There was very little downtime in the household. And I know that could have been created, some tension and stress. But did you feel growing up in the household that I was always on? Was I not present enough?
I mean, she was always on, but she was always there for us. I can't really think of a time where I said, "Hey, Mom, we need to do this, or this," and she said no. So, and like I said before, it's kind of happened my whole life, so I don't really think twice about it, and you kind of adapt to it. And if anything, as I got older, I mean, there were times when I was a little kid where I was like, "Oh, where's Mom?" And if me and my two sisters were home with the babysitter, we were like, "Oh, we miss Mom." But I mean, that's going to happen with all kids. But as I got older, and same with my two younger sisters, it kind of makes you want to pick up the slack a little more, seeing your mom and your dad as well working constantly. So I think it sort of instilled sort of a higher level work ethic and what sort of we wanted to visualize, because I think what my mom helped a lot with me is sort of finding what you want and then how to get there.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, as far as
and you can talk to me as your mom. You don't have to say my mom. You can say.
Oh, okay. I mean, as far as always being on, I mean, yeah, it didn't really make a difference. No.
Yes, that was one of the things that you stop for a moment, and life is so crazy. You stop for a moment and think, how is my profession and my drive in being an entrepreneur affecting my kids? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it something that, is going to in the future change the way they feel about relationships or professions, or do they want to be an entrepreneur? Is it what do you think, seeing Dad and I as entrepreneurs and as smaller business owners, do you think in the future that you would see yourself eventually wanting to do something like that in whatever profession you wind up pursuing?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but my parents have always told me, you have always told me, do what you want. You don't have to take over what they are doing.
Right.
It's definitely something I would be sort of interested in, but I don't feel like I have to, start a business or something like that.
Right. That's what a lot of people will say to me. "Oh, you have two girls. Are they going to take over your business?" And I'm like, if they wanted to, that'd be one thing, but that's not something that I ever even thought of. Even at their, growing up at a young age, I never thought that I would push them into that profession. That never was my thought process. And I know a lot of family-run businesses do that, and kids wind up growing up and having this linear plan for them. And then they get there and they realize, geez, I don't really think that this is really what I want. And then, it can become a family rift thing too. I'm very adamant about all three of you pursuing whatever your passions are. So, but I am really big on, and you can probably attest to this, trying out different things, because you don't really know, how can somebody ask you at 15 years old, 16 years old, what do you want to do? Some people, say, okay, my dad at that age wanted to be a brain surgeon. He knew from 14, 15 years old, there was some show on television at the time, and it had a brain surgeon as the main character, and he wanted to be that brain surgeon. So that's what his goal was, and that's what he wound up doing. But there's many situations where, you might have an idea what you kind of like. But even in college, you're taking classes that will allow you to kind of navigate what you want to do. And hey, maybe at the end of the day, the both of us will create a tech company and create something using your skills and my experience and my wisdom to create a new business together. Who knows, right?
Right.
But, I always say, I want you to try out everything. And I think sometimes you looked at me like, okay, Mom, I think we're going a little too far with, retreats and.
Yeah, well, I think what that helped me with, that sort of attitude, and to be honest, is not really a problem, is I have so many interests that narrowing
Right.
it down is sort of is the problem here. But honestly, I would rather have that than not knowing what to do and having too little interest and trying to see what I actually like that way.
And one of the things that I try to really push with the three of you is the ability to network. The ability to network with people from all different walks of life and people who have different talents, and learning from them and surrounding yourself with people who are different than you, because those are the people that you're going to wind up learning the most from. You don't learn from people that are like you, because people that are like you and around you, that's a comfortable space, right? And I always used to say to you, you're going to grow the most out of your comfort zone, right? Where I really pushed you out of your comfort zone, probably like 10th, 11th grade is where you really got pushed out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
And you really were open to meeting so many different people. And that's kind of what I love about SU, is how international it is. And, being a professor there, I meet so many amazing students from really cool places.
And I think working too also helped a lot as well, because I worked a retail job as soon as I was able to get a job. And that kind of was like sort of a culture shock to me, because it was a set schedule, and I'm not really used to a set schedule with having parents with the jobs.
We're not 9 to 5, right? We're like 24/7, right?
And I was learning, how to talk to people it was at the end of 10th grade that I got this job. So I was sort of learning pretty early on how to like talk to different people, how to do this, how to do that. And that's kind of what it was.
So in retrospect, like getting through high school and now that you're in college, what could we as parents, as entrepreneurial parents, have done differently? What can we tell other entrepreneurs who are raising young kids? What can they do better? What better than what we did?
I honestly don't think anything. I think if anything, the more absence there is, or sort of like a healthy kind of absence, because there were a lot of times where we would be alone. It teaches you how to handle things yourself at an early age, and that's going to help you a lot throughout your later years of high school and your early years of college.
Right.
But yeah, I don't really think there was anything that could change or could make it better.
Because as parents, especially entrepreneurial parents, where you're not working a 9 to 5 job, you're literally working when the business is there.
Yeah, I mean, there are times where both parents will be up until 3, 4 in the morning, all night. You're taking phone calls 24/7. You're coming in and out of the house. I think that's a good thing, because it keeps you busy, but it also teaches the kids a work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
And it also at least taught me to sort of how to fend for myself and sort of how to take care of things for myself. And I think it helped my 2 sisters do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. What else do you think parents who are entrepreneurs and have little kids need to know? Like, what sort of advice can we give them? Like, I know from a parental standpoint, it's hard to set boundaries sometimes with your business, because sometimes life is going to be all family, where, we go on vacations together, or if you had a game, I would definitely like make an arrangement to have somebody cover for me so that I can be at your games and any special events that was going on. Do we set those boundaries very firmly and discipline wise? How do you prioritize? And that's what I ask, to these parents who are, concerned about how their choice of profession is going to affect their kids. I think it comes down to what your priorities are, and it comes down to what sort of balance do you want to have between work and life. There's going to be times where you have to give up revenue for time with family. And that's up to you as to how much that balance needs to be. There's going to be times where you're definitely going to have to service a customer before you go home. So if you plan to have dinner with kids and there's an emergency at your customer's business and, you've got to service that customer, you might miss that dinner. So I think there's got to be some give and take, and there's got to be also, you have to give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. You can't keep telling yourself how bad you are that you missed this or missed that or can't go to something. Because even people with 9-to-5 jobs that have demanding employers, those people miss things too, right? So, I see people who have to work late and can't go to, a fashion show that their kid is in, or, people who can't be present at certain periods of the day when they would like to. These are things that are challenges as parents, not just as entrepreneurs. And we have to kind of stop really kicking ourselves about it on a daily basis where, am I doing this wrong? You have to stop thinking about it. Prioritize things, talk to your kids, stay communicated with them. What's important to them? Was it important that I was at those games?
Yeah. There were a lot of times where, my mom and my dad would have to stay late or work extra or whatever. But the one thing was they always put us first and they put the work second. So, like I said before, they were always there for us. If we needed anything, they would drop the work and then they would come and do whatever they needed to do with us. But yeah, I would say just to put the kids first, or your kids first. And,
yeah.
And then
it is a sacrifice, and I think it's a sacrifice for any parent.
Yeah, and I think the kids have to be flexible as well. Like I know if they're like little, like,
right.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But as you get older, you kind of have to understand, like, okay, this is a situation. We might lose out on it, but you always have next time.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. I always tried to make sure that if there was something that was coming home from the school, like dates and things, I put it in and make sure that I set that time aside, and if I knew that, like, you loved basketball. So I was really big at, and I'm so glad that we did the trip to the NBA experience in Disney before it closed during COVID, because that was an amazing trip for us. We had anything that I knew my kids were interested in, I was constantly searching and researching on what experiences I could do with them. Like with our youngest, Dominique, with your sister, we, any of these experiences, like the Stranger Things experience, when I saw that come out, I knew that it was like a limited period of time, that it was going to be available for us to go see in New York. And so I made sure that we went and did that experience, So it's important, I think, to realize what your kids like, right? And create experiences that are special, memorable moments for them. One of the biggest challenges, though, for your dad and I think, is the fact that we always had to be kind of two ships passing in the night. So it was hard, unless we were going on like a vacation with you guys where we were all together, it was hard for us to be all together, because one child would be, would have something going on at the same time as the other child, and we'd have to split. Or, if it was a matter of going to a horse show with Valentina, one person had to stay with the other two kids because you couldn't miss school. So it was like there were times where we were all together as a family, and we've really tried to create that environment for you guys. But at the same time, it was a little bit different, where we had to kind of split up sometimes just to kind of conquer different things at the same time. So, and I know that one of the things that has always bugged me is having to be working later so that I would miss dinner with you guys. So it was always like your grandmother, thank God for her, was our rock when you guys were little, because she was the one that made sure that, after school, you were doing your homework, you had your snack, and then, she'd make dinner, and then I'd come home and meet you guys, and Dad would come home and meet you guys. But then it's like we weren't seated at the table eating dinner together. And I think that's something that I regret, but I don't know how I could have changed it.
Yeah, I mean, it never really affected me. I don't really think it really affected my sisters either. If anything, it brought me really, really close to my grandma.
Right.
So, I mean, that's the positive sort of side of it. But I mean, it was a weird concept when I was little and I would go over to some of my friends' house and they would all sit down. I was like, yeah, we don't really do this at my house. But I mean,
it just makes me feel so guilty.
I never saw it as a big deal. No.
Yeah.
But I also got to eat pretty much whatever I want. So, I would have chips in my room and things like that instead of having to go and
I think was less disciplined. If you wanted it, you had it, right?
Yeah. I mean, there were stricter kind of things, but I mean, pretty much other than that, if Mom wasn't home, really anything flew. So that was definitely one of the plus sides of having parents.
Well, it's funny. It's funny because you're into the snacks.
Yeah.
So every couple weeks when they were at school, when the kids were at school, I would, if I had a Monday off or something, I used to close on Mondays to kind of get my life back in order for the week. And I would rip their bedrooms apart. So change the sheets, go through. So I would find about 1 million empty Gatorade bottles. I would find empty chip bags. And then I think they would come home and look in the room and go, oh, she cleaned. Oh no. She probably found the 5,000 things that were under my bed that were deteriorating and molding, right? So, but that was the one thing that Dante was always really big on, the snacks.
Yeah. I mean, there were also times too where me and my sisters and I would literally just tear the house apart when Mom was at home, or we had a couple babysitters and we kind of just overtook the babysitter and just destroyed the house. But we took charge.
Remember when you were really into the wrestling?
Yeah.
And I had, so a friend of mine was selling a twin mattress. And I said, hey, can you drop it off at my house? I need it for my living room. He was like, what? I'll never forget it. And so he dropped it off and I said, I need it for Monday Night SmackDown because my son smacks me down during the Monday Night SmackDown. We would watch Monday Night SmackDown.
I would put it in the middle of the living room, and then I would have the wrestling on the TV. Or we had, I had gotten a gift, a DVD for WrestleMania, and I would just do the moves on my sisters over and over when they were working. But yeah, I mean, it's little things like that. You wouldn't have gotten to do that if Mom was at home and was saying, no, you can't do that. Somebody's going to get hurt. I mean, there's positives, but those outweigh the cons any day. So.
Right. I know when you were little, when all three of you were little, I think I had that guilt, and that guilt started to dissipate a little bit as you grew up. And now I think about, boy, we did have a lot of fun back then. I mean, we always made sure we went on trips. Yeah, I always want to make sure that you didn't miss out on any opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So I was really big on being everything to everybody and making sure that you knew how awesome you were. You knew that you could do anything. The sky was the limit. And I didn't put limits on you. And I think that actually paid off in the end.
I mean,
because
there were little to no sort of pressures on me, quote unquote. And I think that's kind of crucial for really any kid, because they kind of have to find sort of their purpose and what they want. And they just have to sort of take the time to develop themselves, because it's harder when you're in school, playing a sport or whatever, working, and you're doing everything.
You're in a restricted environment,
Yeah.
right, where you don't have the freedom to kind of fail and get yourself back up.
Yeah. Yeah. It helps you to and it teaches you how to handle things your own on your own.
Right.
Too.
Right.
That's one of the really big things that I took away from it. And I think it's one of the more important things that I learned.
Well, a lot of awakenings and a lot of information that I think is really valuable, not just to me personally, but I think all parents, especially those who are entrepreneurs and face the reality of sometimes missing out on stuff, right? And trying to make everything work for the betterment of the family. And, not having, it's a very risky situation being an entrepreneur, not having that solid job that you can rely on, where you know that on a weekly basis, your paycheck is going right into your checking account, right? Your savings account, right? So it can be a very scary place, especially when you've got young children and you're really, concerned about their safety and security. And that definitely was a concern for us as parents. But the one thing entrepreneurs are a little different in their thinking, their thought process, is that entrepreneurs have a level of perseverance, persistence, and just overall real gutsy nature, where I knew at the end of the day, I was always going to be the last business standing in my industry, even during COVID. So remember COVID, and you guys were home. Thank God for your dad having some flexibility where he'd get you set up on the computers and everything. I was up early and out the door because I knew, even though my business was closed, because we were forced to be closed by the state, I knew that whatever revenue drivers that I had access to, I was going to go out there and work, as long as I needed to for the certain financial goals that we needed for our family. And I was not going to defer my mortgage payments on my building and all of that. I was not going to do that. So I figured out what I had to do. And I feel like during that time, did you guys have the opportunity to kind of connect more with your dad by him being home a little bit more? How did COVID affect you guys?
Yeah, I think a little bit. It really helped me because for me, I would always be on FaceTime with my friends or playing video games with my friends. Mm-hmm. So it got me a lot closer with them. And it was one of sort of the greatest times of our lives.
Oh, wow.
COVID.
That's good to know.
Well, because I would wake up in the morning. We would all immediately FaceTime each other. We would get our work done, and then we would play video games for the next 10 hours. Right. That was kind of what we wanted to do when we were in school. So, but yeah, it definitely got me closer to my dad. It got me closer to my sisters too. And it helped me, especially with kids around the neighborhood as well. Those, I've known them since I was little, but it gave us time to, make sure that there were people near us just in case if my mom or my dad or if anything were to happen or if we ever needed anything, if they were taken up, that they could be right there.
Right. Yeah, COVID was was a little bit of a scary time, and it was challenging for me. I was really running my business on my own and trying to figure out ways to create revenue without customers, which is kind of a difficult thing to do. But I did know that I was going to be the last one standing, and I wound up being that. And thank God that I had the resources that I had overseas in being able to get the KN95 masks here before even our local municipalities had the ability to do that, because that's really what got us through COVID. That got us through 4 months of being closed. And so I was thankful for that. Is there anything else that you want to share and that might be of value to parents who, feel the guilt and are kind of struggling, like, okay, do I just go get a job? Do I stop, running this business that I have? And do I just go try to find something in my field that has a secure paycheck, that has a 401k, that has vacation pay? What types of things do we say to those parents?
Yeah, I mean, at least for me, chances are the kid's not really going to care if they're super little. I know for me, I was always distracted with playing outside and watching, something on my iPad or with my sisters. I didn't really notice because I was always doing something and I was always occupied. My grandma lived up the street, so if I wanted to see her, I could just walk right up there, ride my bike up there, or I would ride like my bike with my friends around the neighborhood. So chances are the kid's not really going to care and they're actually going to become more flexible. But I would always say to put them first and try your best to show up for them and then put the business second. Yeah, I mean, there are going to be times where it's going to be ups and downs, peaks and valleys, but I mean, you get through them. And the kids are going to sort of just get used to it.
I feel like you've learned to kind of roll with the punches too, but that's your personality. You're very controlled. You're a good listener. You think things through, which is totally different personality from me. Where I'm like more like, I'm reactive and I'm like, I'm like the psycho Italian mother. As long as my kids are happy, I'm happy. God forbid anybody try to hurt my kids, but you're very emotionally mature, academically mature. At a young age, I wanted you to make sure that you were in control of your own learning. I wanted you to take that responsibility and care about it and understand why it was so important. And that's why I tried to not step in. I tried to let you handle things on your own with teachers and whatnot before I would have to get involved with something. Do you think that was beneficial, or would you have wanted me to be more overbearing or less overbearing?
I think the less that you can step into your kid's life, especially in the later years, like obviously, check in with them, like, do like the regular things that parents do, but, give them a little space to kind of, say, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I don't want to do. I want to get this job. I want to work. I want to make money and do that.
And I know that I was kind of like, I was that like, I wasn't just a helicopter mom. I was like one of those moms that was just like beyond that. I know I was.
I will be honest, like some of the times she would, sit me down and kind of talk to me, and I would just totally tune her out and just say, okay, and just let her like, talk. But yeah, I mean, I was never really affected by anything.
Well, awesome. I think unless there's anything else that you have to share, I wanted to make sure that we addressed entrepreneurs and parents who are entrepreneurs, especially, dual entrepreneurial families, where it becomes a little bit different experience than other households sometimes. And although that there are standard normals in households, not every household is going to be the same. And I think we have to stop, beating ourselves up about the guilt that we've screwed up our kids, because at the end of the day, you do the best that you can with what you've got. You make decisions in the best interest of your kids and the family as a whole. And you really just try to allow them to be themselves and allow them to learn what they're actually good at, what they actually like, instead of telling them what they like. And I know that's a hard thing to kind of restrict yourself from doing, and I'm guilty of it. But I think it's something that, this is a good topic of conversation because it's something that we don't really get to discuss as parents. And sometimes we're embarrassed to talk to other parents about it because everybody else's life is perfect, right? Right? On the internet, everybody else is perfect. We see the Christmas pictures at the end of the year with everybody's dressed up in matchy-matchy. Well, I know the one year we did our picture where we were like, I think Dad had like his shorts on like he usually does in the middle of winter. We had the dogs and the dogs jumping on Dad the big dog's jumping on Dad because she loves Dad. The big dog's 150 pounds. She's a lot of woman. And then we have the two small little Yorkies that are like all over me. And so we have some pretty funny photos that, and I think I've tried to sometimes try to put up that, not the facade that of being perfect, because I don't ever try to say that we're perfect. To me, we're perfectly imperfect. Like I think we've done our best, and I think that we've tried to create that line of communication to stay open between parents and children, and we're doing the best that we can.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely don't have like a normal kind of like life or schedule. Like, we're definitely a little different.
But you also have to admit,
it makes you a little more interesting.
Well, you have to admit, though, there's been some opportunities that we've had as a family because of, my industry and what I do, because of what Dad does. The last minute, like, hey, you want to fly to Florida? Hey, you want to?
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, do you want, let's go shopping for a car.
Yep. Yeah.
So there are, the positives to this as well, but definitely talking through and being able to relate to other families that are similar to ours has been a really great experience for me. And we meet awesome families all the time, and a lot of people in our neighborhood are in the same type of situation as us.
Yeah.
But sometimes people look at us like, okay, you're a little nuts, but yeah. but that's where the fun is, you know, and that's where the opportunity is for us to kind of experience different things, go to different places, and learn about not just ourselves but each other, because watching our kids grow is and watching you mature and into this like amazing person that was just like this little beautiful little baby. It's been an awesome experience, and I'm looking forward to watching you guys grow up even into adults and having your own families and careers and everything, and being there when there's problems, and being there when things are great, and being there unconditionally to kind of get you through things and help you with things. So thank you, everyone. We are going to conclude because Marie said so for today. And watch us again next time, because we always have some really fun and unique topics to talk about. And hopefully we can relate to things that are happening in your life. Take care, everybody.